Story 1. When I knew I messed up, but I wasn't scared to talk about it. I was still a little anxious, but telling him what I did wrong didn't change anything. He worked with me through it as if it was nothing. Story 2. When I didn't have that anxiety you get in relationships. The thought of where they are, what they're doing, whether they'll message me or I have to message them first. There were no games, it was all consistent. Even after an argument, I knew I'd wake up to a good morning message. Everything felt safe and secure. No worries, just admiration. Story 3. She texted me, "Look at the moon." And I was on my phone at the time. I saw the banner notification and immediately took a screenshot. I then asked myself why I did that. Story 4. Probably when I realized I was thinking about them all the time, even during random moments. It wasn't just excitement anymore, but feeling calm and happy just being around them. Story 5. I knew I was in love when I saw the way he breathed, the way he talked and walked and smiled and nodded, and I saw art. Suddenly, the simplest things a human can do were magical when they were done by him. I saw happiness. Story 6. We were lying in his bed, and I think someone closed the front door, which was loud and made me flinch. He almost immediately said, "You're okay," and pulled the blanket a little bit further up. Something about him saying, "You're okay," instead of "It's okay," and so quickly. I don't know, but that was the moment. Story 7. The first sign was, for some reason, I couldn't stop looking at the shape of her face, the way her lips moved when she spoke. I remember thinking that her blonde hair was so beautiful, it put the sun to shame. And even though somebody had broken me horribly just a few months earlier, even though I desperately did not want to have feelings, I couldn't imagine being without her. It was a terrifying and beautiful moment. Story 8. I never thought people would be irreplaceable until I met my husband. Ours was a long distance, never going to happen in a million years type of relationship. When I realized the thought of doing the easy thing and finding someone else that's more convenient crushed my heart, I realized he should be the man deserving of all the love I have in me. I love you, Pookie. I thank God every day for you. Story 9. I knew I loved him from the start when I first met him. He was so kind, funny, and cute. We met 5 to 6 years ago, but I am finally with him. It has been 1 year and 2 months since we have been together now, and I still love him the same. He makes me nervous still, his touches, and everything about him makes me feel more crazy about him. I have never felt this way about anyone before. Maybe I thought I did, but I did not. Being with him is so much different. I can be me around him without any judgment. He makes me feel special. Story 10. When he researched what seizures are on YouTube so he would know what to do if I ever have a seizure in front of him, that's when I knew he was the one. Story 11. We had gone to a steakhouse for dinner, had a bit too much food and a bit too much to drink. We asked the server to box up dessert. We took an Uber home and passed out, laughing about it. After some intimate time in the morning, we remembered the dessert, so I grabbed it out of the refrigerator and plated it up. It was a white raspberry truffle cheesecake with raspberry sauce. We sat in bed, giggling and eating cake. When we were done, I noticed her casting a furtive glance at the plate and sort of glancing at me out of the corner of her eyes. Me, "That was good." Her, "Uh-huh." Me, "Wish I had more." Her, "Uh-huh." Her, glance. Me, "You want to lick the plate, right?" Her, "No." "Well, actually, yes." Me, "Go for it. I'll hold your hair back." Her laugh and the light in her eyes were too much for me. I was smitten, would never want her to do this with anyone else ever, and knew I would be putting a ring on it eventually. We have been married for 21 years now. We are not big on formalities, but every few years, we will track down a slice of that cake and have it on the morning of our anniversary. Story 12. I realized I was truly in love when we were sitting together in silence, doing nothing particularly special. We were just on the couch, both caught up in our own little worlds. She was reading, I was scrolling through my phone, but there was this overwhelming sense of peace and contentment that washed over me. I didn't need her to say anything or do anything to make the moment perfect. It just was. It hit me then, how deeply I cared for her, how much her presence alone made everything better. That was the moment I knew I was in love. Story 13. I'm a pragmatist at heart, so I thought couples who fell in love at first sight and were still in love in their old age, as I worked in aged care, were just two hopeless romantics meeting and getting lucky when it turned out to be a lifelong thing. And then I met my husband. I knew who he was, the core of who he was, from the very first split second I saw him. All the baggage and life experiences that dictated behavior, I figured, were just semantics I would learn with time, but I knew him. I was right. It's been 8 years, and we have 3 kids, and I am still completely in love with him. But the moment that completely sealed it for me happened about 3 weeks in. We had met and started living together the day after through a series of unplanned sleepovers, stayed up too late talking, and one day we went to the store. He was paying for stuff, and I realized I wasn't uncomfortable because I was going to marry him. And not in a giddy, I can't wait way. In a calm, we literally have the rest of our lives to get to it, no rush kind of way. For his part, he claims he knew in the first week. Story 14. When I realized I was saving the last slice of pizza for her instead of sneakily eating it myself, it was a small, quiet moment that said, "Yep, you're more important than the last piece of pepperoni perfection." Story 15. Have you ever just listened to someone talk, not really hearing what they're saying, but just feeling their presence? When they set the standard for reality, knowing that when they're gone, you'll be lost trying to figure out your place in it. The world crumbles with each and every word. That separation from what we choose to believe is real and what we know to be real finds harmony. Love is truly magical. Story 16. When I saw his baby pictures during my visit to his parents' house, something about those images of him growing up made me realize how much I loved him and everything about him. Story 17. It was the day they released our bar exam results. Passing was the ultimate goal of 3 brutal years of schooling and would mean the difference between finally being able to work as a licensed attorney or facing months of more grueling study to retry. When I saw that I passed, I barely felt any relief and realized it was more important to me to know that she had passed too. Story 18. When I truly, genuinely realized that I valued his happiness as much as my own, he was telling me about his plans and ambitions, and I was excited for him and absolutely thrilled when they progressed in any way. I love him so much. His happiness really means the world to me. Story 19. I remember her unique features. Her eyebrows, hands, shoes she was wearing, the color of her dress, her hairstyle, her likes and dislikes, the way she talks, smiles, and her mistakes. I remember every bit of it. Unfortunately, she was my summer. Story 20. Throughout high school, I was very dorky about my crushes and never had a girlfriend, nor had I ever had a kiss. I decided during my first week of college that I'd say forget it to finding love and just try to be casual and hook up without getting invested. I was taking an art class for fun and noticed a girl who I found pretty attractive, international from Indonesia. Went out on a few dates, my first ever ones, and realized I didn't have it in me to hit it and quit it. She hadn't even had her first kiss either, and I was starting to realize that, yeah, I actually like this girl a lot. On the last day of the quarter, we were walking through a pasture near campus when I asked her if she'd be my girlfriend, and she said yes. When I dropped her off at her apartment, I left to go buy a notebook and bought a leather-bound journal, and it hit me. I could not go another second without knowing what it was to kiss her. I drove back, called her, and she came out, and she knew what I was there for. We shared our first ever kiss, and I felt my already melting heart just completely liquefy in warmth. We had a rough relationship over the next 2 years, due to culture and family problems, all of which I could see were stealing her youth from her. So one day when she broke up with me, I begged to work through it for a couple of days until one day, she broke down crying, asking me to just accept it. I realized I was doing this to her, so I immediately shut up and agreed to go our separate ways. 8 years ago, and many relationships since, I still remember her every time I look at the night sky. We came into contact a couple of years ago and spoke. She was engaged, married now, happily. I wish her all the best. I don't know if you can still love someone you haven't really known in almost a decade. They're hardly the same person anymore, most likely. But the love that was will have forever changed the inner workings of my heart. And every night when I try to sleep, I remember the feel of her arms looping around my neck and her quiet voice against the sounds of a San Francisco night Don't ever leave me, and part of me never will. Story 21. He got hammered while we were camping on a float trip. I spent all night hearing him drink water, then lean over me to throw up out of the tent opening. Meanwhile, his butt is inside the tent, passing gas. On repeat, all night long. Realized that night, wow, I'm not even annoyed. I just love this crazy person. Story 22. I was a student at the time, and the general stresses of life led to me having a pretty severe case of strep throat. I'm talking about being physically incapable of eating solid food for what felt like days. My diet seemed to consist of only Gatorade. I was essentially bedridden, passed out on a couch while dealing with the strep throat and liquid diet, and hadn't been able to see my girlfriend in days. At what must have been the peak of this illness, my girlfriend paid me a surprise visit, bringing various soups and essentially feeding my weakened self the first non-sports drink-related substance in days. I knew then and there that I was in love with her. We would go on to date for a few years. Now, our wedding anniversary is just a few weeks away, and I'm sitting here on our couch, different from my strep couch, writing this while she and our 2 dogs quietly snore, cuddled next to me. Story 23. I was having a really bad panic attack after an incident, and my boyfriend called me up on the phone to calm me down. I just felt really loved and protected in that moment, and it hit me that he actually cares for me and I want to make him feel just as loved. There's also his engagement in stuff I like without any hesitation. He would try out books and movies and then talk in depth about them with me, or go to concerts with me even though he has never heard of the artist before. He made it clear he just wanted to see me happy. Story 24. When I genuinely missed them after being apart for a couple of weeks and couldn't wait to see them and felt it was truly reciprocated. Never felt like that with anyone else. Story 25. It sounds strange, but it was when we got sick on vacation and I rubbed his back while he vomited and cleaned his vomit up. It was time to just go into crisis mode and ride it out, but I didn't feel disgusted. I just felt overwhelming care and concern. Love overrides disgust. Story 26. The instant I realized I would never get to talk to her again. No, she's not dead. She's alive, and I hope living her best life. After 10 years of nearly daily interaction, she made the decision that her happiness did not include me being a part of her life anymore. Ellie, wherever you are, I wish you nothing but the best, and I hope you will find someone who will treat you right. Story 27. I had the first inkling the first time we met and went in for a greeting hug, and the smell, aura, vibe of those few seconds made me feel like candy floss. But I think I really knew a few days later when we were just lying around listening to music and not talking, and I had the sudden urge to share a very personal secret with him. I looked over at him and opened my mouth to speak, but bottled it and looked away, and closed my eyes and fought tears for a few seconds. And when I looked back at him, he reached out and touched my face and had this look that was a mixture of understanding, compassion, and protectiveness all rolled into one. There was just this feeling of deep connection, peace, and comfort that just melted me. Story 28. I have a rare syndrome that affects my eyes. My left eye lacks a nerve, so I can't move it certain ways, and it looks weird. I have always been insecure and bullied about it. The first time we met, I noticed him looking at it as we spoke, and I felt so bad because it always happens. When I turned my face, he told me something along the lines of, "I think you have really pretty eyes," which sounds simple for most, but made me feel safe for the first time in years. Almost 1.5 years after, he still tells me stuff like that when I feel insecure or defends me when someone else laughs about it. I love him with my soul. Story 29. When I was at the airport to drop her off and was waiting before she disappeared into the crowd, she turned back for a last glimpse. The moment we made eye contact, I knew I would marry her. Story 30. I was there with him when he was facing life problems and also when we were sleeping. If he didn't snore, I would touch him or rub his chest. Then he would snore again. If he didn't snore or breathe, although I was in the deepest sleep of my life, I would totally wake up and rub his chest. Story 31. When the honeymoon phase faded, I realized he did have flaws, and some of them were absurdly annoying. However, I still wanted him around forever, and I didn't wish to change or fix anything about him. Every day, It still feels like a superior force flew me to the other side of the world just so I could enjoy his contagious laugh and smile, scoff at his deafening dad sneezes. Story 32. We looked into each other's eyes and we both said, "I don't want to scare you, but I am falling in love with you." That was 43 years ago. We've been married for 41 years now. Story 33. I met this girl when I was 12. I had a little crush on her, but I had a crush on every woman. Even then, though, it felt different. We were both pretty mentally unwell, but it didn't matter to me. The more we talked, the more I thought I would be a happier person if I was with her. The moment I knew was about 5 months after talking to her. She went to a mental health center for a week. The first day was crushing. It felt like something I cared deeply about was being taken, and I couldn't do anything. Obviously, it was best for her to go, but that's the closest feeling I can describe. I had texted her daily, saying how much I missed her and how I hope she's okay and everything I was doing in my day-to-day life, etc. It still wasn't until about 3 months after that we started dating because she didn't think I liked her, and I didn't think she liked me. Been together for the last 6 years, and I couldn't be happier. Of course, I look back and wonder just how oblivious I was. She dropped so many hints, and I just wasn't picking up what she was putting down.